Alright, it's right after Christmas, New Year's on the way, and I guess a lot of us are trying to reflect on what we might do differently in the coming year to make things go a bit better with our climbing. I know from many of the questions that you ask me that lots of you are looking for motivation, and that you think that finding motivation is kind of like a missing piece that will allow you to work harder and discipline yourself and make all your goals happen. In this episode, I'm going to suggest that this approach of looking for motivation first and then using it to train can be ineffective, and I'm going to invite you to turn this approach on its head and try an alternative that's worked extremely well for me and actually consistently well. Often people will characterize me or tell me that I'm an inherently highly motivated person, and I'm not. I'm not that at all. All I've done to earn that reputation is just get a few things right that dramatically lower the amount of motivation I actually need. And by contrast, I think that many people's life routine is arranged in such a way that they really need large amounts of motivation to get anything good to happen. But rather than try and dig that motivation well kind of deeper, I find that just changing a few things in my lifestyle means that a little motivation goes much, much further. If anything, doing a small amount of training should motivate us to do more. But this is where it gets kind of confusing. If you just type motivation into the search bar in YouTube, you'll get loads of videos that show you how to generate motivation that work along this line of thinking. They'll say things like, just start. Just force yourself to get out of the door in the morning and the motivation will come. And to a certain extent, this does work. I've actually used this approach myself on occasion. You know, training, exercise and time outside in the mountains is all of that's rewarding and it is motivating, but I use that approach on occasion rather than the core strategy. It's using a highly rewarding motivator to clear a high bar of required motivation. But there's another way. So my problem with this approach to motivation is that when it's applied on its own, it tends to give quite inconsistent results, and it still doesn't get to the core of the problem of why motivation has to be coaxed into existence in the first place. If you watch a lot of YouTube like I do, I'm sure you'll have noticed many of the same folk who make motivational videos speaking about becoming burnt out and having to step back and find motivation again. And if you've noticed that, then I think you're getting over the target for understanding the problem here. In my mind, this strategy of just start falters because it intervenes too far downstream from the problem. The problem that it fails to address is not having enough space in your life to absorb the physical and psychological cost of additional stress. So instead of trying to clear this high motivational bar caused by all the stress and fatigue and burnout, instead you lower the bar. I'm not going to tell you that that's easy to do, but it is more effective. So here's another point of confusion to resolve. Training is a stress in itself, but training also acts to increase your capacity to absorb stress. So more of it should be good. But that's only conditionally true, because training stress in the context of a low stress environment will increase your capacity to absorb stress. But in the context of many people's overfilled routines and lifestyles, then training only succeeds in pulling you down further. It just adds to an already overburdened system. Western culture encourages us to keep piling on stress from every angle, and with everything maxed out all the time, it's no wonder that we need a ton more motivation just to go a tiny bit further in our sport. And in my book, 9 out of 10 Climbers Make the Same Mistakes, I suggested that dropping out of Western culture was a key first step in becoming a successful athlete. Maybe dropping out is a little bit strong. It's not about being contrarian, it's just about not swallowing the prevailing culture whole without questioning it first. You know, you can stand back and assess which bits of the culture actually serve your goals and which bits of it that you should ignore. I'm kind of hesitant about prescriptively telling you which bits you should ignore. It's your life after all, but generally speaking, the goal is to create physical and psychological headroom in your life, your routine, and that is free time, quiet time, slack, space. And there's lots of ways to do that, and you'll probably need to employ several of them in parallel. And I do this by things like trying to say no to too much work. And that's not easy. It takes a lot of thought to make sure that the work that I really want to do pays well enough to be able to say no to the rest. I also grossly limit my scrolling time on my phone. I grossly limit my commuting time. My office and my climbing wall are in my house. I try to really limit the time that I spend in draining, stressful places, such as cities. You know, noise and artificial light and air pollution and angry people are all stressors that are decreasing the signal to noise ratio of your training. And your stressors in your life are going to be different from mine. So the goal is to think of what is in your life that's draining, and is there a way to either leave that thing behind or change how you do it. It doesn't necessarily mean cutting things out of your life. There will be some cases where that's just not desirable, and some workaround is actually the answer. And that could be a small thing like deleting an addictive social media app from your phone and only looking at it on a desktop. You know, you don't need to play the game by their rules. Alternatively, it could be something that's really big in your life. I bought a house in Dumbarton with a free world-class climbing wall 10 minutes walk away, which was Dumbarton Rock. My mortgage was £80 each a month, and you know, we're going back a few years, but the point was that I could cover that expense with a day and a half of route setting work each month. And so I had a lot of time left over to climb hard at my free climbing wall, and then to sleep in and properly rest and make the gains. You know, being motivated under those conditions was not very difficult, despite earning very little money. So, you know, when it comes to figuring out your strategy for finding motivation to train in the coming year, I would invite you to put what you're going to do to one side for a while and instead focus on asking the question, what am I not going to do in the coming year? Make space in your life, and if you can do that, the motivation will take care of itself and you won't need to force it. And I've been trying to walk the walk here myself, because over the past couple of months I've been working on a couple of really big projects that will hopefully be of benefit to you. Firstly, I've written a book about how I went from being a pretty average climber in my first 5 years of climbing to overtaking a lot of my peers and ending up doing the first E11 in the world. I made a series of good decisions in my apprenticeship as a climber, and a lot of them happened by accident, and I only realised how powerful they were with hindsight. And I've never really written them down in a coherent story, and so I'd like to hand you the insights that took me 15 years to realise. And I'm also doing a collaboration with Magnus Mitbo, and that's also quite a big project. It's not on YouTube, but it's on Magnus's new platform called Altitude. I've been writing a video course on movement technique for climbers, which will be on the Altitude platform, and I'm about halfway through the preparation for that. But I understand that I can't write a course, write a book, produce a video every week on YouTube and get a good response to my training. And so hence my recent break from YouTube. And as soon as I finish with those other projects, which will be quite soon, then I'll pick it up again with YouTube. Hopefully I'm not squeezing the space that I have always kept in my life to respond to my own training too much in the meantime. And I really can't afford to do that, because all of my climbing goals for this coming year are really hard, and they're going to demand my very best form. In my view, too much of training discourse is focused on tweaking the training itself, and not enough is focused on protecting or enhancing the actual response to training. And in this video, I suppose I've been quite general, but I do have some more episodes planned out that get into the specifics. So do subscribe if you want to catch that. And in the meantime, here's another video that I made some time ago at New Year about some more tangible, practical inputs that supply me with plenty of motivation. I don't think that one was clickbait enough for the YouTube algorithm gods, so not so many of you saw it, but that video does focus more on the downstream stuff, so I hope I don't leave you with the impression that I don't think that's important as well. Okay, I'll see you in the next one, and Happy New Year.